How's the royal family? I pray that everyone is doing well. It's going to be a long video, my royal family. I know some have heard about it, but we're going to go much deeper into the drama and the corruption that continues over in Puerto Rico. And so I'm going to read an article first, my royal family. We're going to go back into the past a little bit, and then I'm going to bring y'all right up to present day. So let's get into this one and only article. Puerto Rico seek more help from U.S. after damaging quake. Puerto Rico Governor Vanda Vasquez asked the U.S. government Thursday to issue a major disaster declaration for 10 additional moplacities following the recent damaging quake. The petition came 2 weeks after the 6.4 magnitude tremor hit near the U.S. territory's southern coast, killing one person, destroying hundreds of homes, and causing damage, the estimate at $200 million. U.S. President Donald Trump approved a major disaster declaration last week for the more affected moplacities. That's the best I can pronounce it, forgive me. Which officials say will free up more federal funds for recovery and reconstruction. Vasquez, which is the governor, is seeking to extend the help to the moplacities, and they're naming off these different regions. I can't pronounce none of them. Anyway, Vasquez made the announcement one day after protesters gathered at the Seaside Governor's Mansion and Capitol building to demand her resignation following recent discovery of apparent forgotten disaster supplies. Let me see. Aim continuing aftershocks at thousands of people remain in shelters. What a mess. So this article came out yesterday. So y'all know y'all gonna listen to a number of videos to get the speed on some things. So this first video is June 13th, and it says Puerto Ricans hoping Trump send aid. Millions of Puerto Ricans are waiting to see if President Trump will sign a major disaster declaration to authorize much needed aid. 4,000 people are still in shelters, and many other are sleeping outside after yet another powerful earthquake on Saturday. All right, so we're going to get into this. Again, this is June 13th, 2020.
There have been multiple aftershocks in Puerto Rico this morning as millions there wait to see if President Trump will sign a major disaster declaration to authorize much-needed aid. 4,000 people are still in shelters, and many others are sleeping outside after yet another powerful earthquake Saturday. This video shows the mayor of hard-hit Guanica running away mid-interview as powerful tremors shook the region just a day before. Our lead national correspondent David Begnaud is there now at the top of a mountain where people are seeking refuge. David, who have you met up there?
Anthony, we've met nearly 100 people, most of whom don't even know each other, who came here about a week ago and set up camp. There are camps around this entire property, which, by the way, is owned by the government. The gate was open and people were allowed to set up here. They've set up makeshift kitchens, and they're not moving. They're not going anywhere. They left their home at the bottom of the mountain and came to the highest point they could find. For most of them, it's not because their homes were damaged or destroyed. It's because they simply don't feel safe there. The aftershocks continue daily. There are multiple aftershocks that you usually feel, and that's why people say they feel safer right here. Here's what happened over the last 48 hours. It happened Saturday morning, just before 9 a.m. A 5.9 magnitude earthquake centered off the southwestern coast rocked the entire island of Puerto Rico. It was the strongest quake since last week's devastating 6.4, which killed one person and damaged hundreds of buildings. Saturday's earthquake did not injure or kill anyone, but there were landslides and new damage to homes and businesses.
You never know what can happen. Anything can just go just like this. Love your family. Appreciate them. Just thank God every day for what you have.
We met Praxedis Rodriguez and her husband at the top of that mountain in Guanica. They've been living in this tent for most of the last week. They're okay, but she hopes more help is coming for those less able to care for themselves.
We don't know how much longer we're going to be here. We have a lot of elderly that are really in bed, that can't even move out of bed.
Yes, they can continue to feel some aftershocks, and they should be expecting this.
Elizabeth Vanacore is a seismologist with the Puerto Rico Seismic Network. They have more than 20 sensors installed around the island to detect earthquake magnitude.
So I'll bring up the real-time monitor.
As Puerto Ricans wait to see if President Trump will sign that major disaster declaration, FEMA's top official in Puerto Rico told us this.
Update. We're not waiting. We've got our teams out in the field. The tremendous amount of mutual aid that's happening from the island. I'm sure you saw on your way here the caravan.
We did. Traffic was backed up in the mountains of the hardest hit regions on Sunday as Puerto Ricans came from near and far to bring supplies to their neighbors. In fact, we stopped by this home and we noticed this family of 11. They have no power, they have no water, and they've been sleeping out in the yard since Tuesday. Sleeping with them is their 71-year-old grandmother, Rosa. She has end-stage Alzheimer's. She is sunburned, she is sweating, and she looks miserable. And they are desperate to find an ambulance that will evacuate her from here. We were there when an ambulance finally arrived to take Rosa more than 2 hours away to a relative's home in Bayamón. The family sent us this photo saying Rosa is now resting comfortably.
Bless you.
Full disclosure, it was a member of our team who lives here in Puerto Rico and is Puerto Rican who paid for that ambulance, not because he was asked, but because he was there at the scene and wanted to help. So he made a phone call, and that's how the family got the ambulance. And that is another example of how Puerto Ricans have been some of the first and the fastest to get to their neighbors who are in need.
Yeah, David, when I heard about it over the weekend, I was really glad you were there to bring us stories exactly like this to keep us all in the loop. I'm curious, though, how local officials are now responding to yet another new crisis for them.
Well, look, Gail, they say they're doing the best they can, but because so many people are heading to the areas and clogging up the roads, the governor yesterday said, you guys need to send your donations through the government, and that, people went wild when they heard that, quite honestly. People here, Gail, have a deep distrust of the government following what happened 2 years ago after the hurricane, and quite frankly, a lot of them say, I'm not leaving this up to you, I'm going there and doing it myself.
And you see them doing that. So much work to be done. Thank you very much, David Begnell, reporting from Puerto Rico once again.
Yeah, thank you, David.
All right, my royal family. I know some of these videos, the sound is low and it's not on my end. So we're just going to continue to roll with it. So again, that was on the 13th. Okay, this particular video, we're going to get deeper. Puerto Ricans call for the resignation of governor after Hurricane Maria supplies found in warehouse. And that was 2 days ago that this video was put up.
In Puerto Rico, outrage is growing after a stash of untouched emergency supplies was discovered at a warehouse. That aid is believed to be from Hurricane Maria, which means it's been sitting around for more than 2 years. Puerto Rico's governor has responded by firing the island's emergency manager, but people there are demanding answers. CNN's Rafael Romo is in Ponce, Puerto Rico. So, Rafael, this happened in the town that you're in. Tell us, do we know how many people could have been assisted by that supply?
if what the reports have been saying is true, many people could have been helped with this aid, Frederica. And this is the warehouse in question where I am that is now being heavily guarded by members of the Puerto Rico National Guard and also the state police. Access to the public here in this area of the port of Ponce is very restricted. And what happened, Frederica, was that at about noon yesterday, there was a report that was shared on social media here in Puerto Rico that spread like wildfire, saying that emergency aid meant for victims of Hurricane Maria 2 years ago was still sitting here and had never been distributed. That prompted about 200 people, and we were here when they came. They came here and lifted up the metal gates and wanted to check for themselves what was inside. They found baby formula, water, cots, other basic necessities. And the men in charge, Carlos Acevedo, he is in charge of up until yesterday, the Office of Emergency Management here in Puerto Rico, said that there was no mishandling, that they had been distributing that, but it was a little too late for Governor Wanda Vazquez, who said that she was effective immediately, dismissing Mr. Acevedo and ordering an investigation by the Secretary of State, which is going to have 48 hours to find out exactly what happened here, Frederica. In the meantime, here on the island, we still have about 7,100 people who are living in shelters, and we have heard complaints that they don't have enough food, water, and some of the basic necessities that they live after this new crisis, a series of earthquakes. Frederica, back to you.
Right. So, I mean, that double whammy, you know, the need after the hurricane, the need after the aftershocks. But wait a minute. So back to all those supplies. A lot of those things you mentioned would have expiration dates, like baby formula. Is any of this salvageable? You know, even sometimes bottled water has an expiration date. Are any of those things that can still be used?
Many of the stuff we're talking about has not expired, but there are also many pallets of water, baby formula that are very questionable. And the reality is that the investigation is barely beginning. They're going to find out how much of the food is expired and how soon they can distribute to those who need it.
All right, let's shut this down. So when I heard about this, I wasn't shocked at all about the supplies, because remember when they had those hurricanes, supplies were really sitting at I know they were at some type of airport, well, let's not, what'd you call that, airplane strip, and they had tons of supplies that came from the States. But Trump, and I know he's doing this because he's ignorant, Trump made a call and said don't give them shit. He didn't even know Puerto Rico was a part of the United States. And keep in mind, these people voted Trump in office. Let's keep that in mind. Trump, you know, let's not lose sight of that. Let me see if I can pull up a better picture of the supplies. Nah, that's not the greatest picture. Y'all just have to watch it on the side. Forgive me, my royal family. So yeah, so they discovered that, which is not surprising. But when all that stuff was going down, when they had their hurricane, they was talking about all these different loopholes they have to go through in order to distribute this stuff. No. I'm going to say it throughout this video. Trump has no intentions of helping these people. Now, when you see people make gestures, or you see the government, unquote, make gestures, that don't necessarily mean they are helping you. And let's keep in mind, we're going to see some unusual things go down because we are in a election season. So certain things people do when they concern about maintaining their position. So, as we continue on, Trump signs declaration of disaster for Puerto Rico 9 days after requests. All right. And so, let's see. 9 days, Governor Vasquez submitted her request. It also came 1 day after Trump, the administration, released $8.2 billion in heavily restricted aid to the island. Heavily restricted aid. Okay, we're going to find out what that's about because I haven't listened to the video. Maybe. Heavily restricted aid. Interesting. Okay, let's go. Let's roll with it.
President Trump has officially signed a declaration of disaster for Puerto Rico. In a tweet, the island's governor thanked the president for his commitment to helping Puerto Rico as it continues to recover from hundreds of earthquakes and aftershocks.
So this comes just 1 day after the Trump administration released more than $8 billion in heavily restricted aid for Hurricanes Maria and Irma. You remember that happened a few years ago.
That's right. Filmmaker and writer Andrew Padilla is here with more. Good to see you. So, the president is restricting aid to Puerto Rico for Hurricane Maria, and one of those restrictions is on spending money on the power grid. Why is the power grid so essential in this particular instance?
Well, a lot of the people that lost power in this recent series of earthquakes, over 1,002 some odd weeks, they also lost it during Maria, right? And so the grid has been unstable since before Maria. So that's what makes this restriction even crazier.
Do we know what the reasoning is behind this restriction? Because I remember, at the time of the hurricanes, that was one of the top conversations, that the power grid already wasn't the best. And so would it be able to sustain not one hit, but two hits? And, it wasn't able to sustain it. What's the that you would think that would be a primary place to put the aid?
The power grid goes down in light rain. It's very clear that Trump does not care about Puerto Rico. The estimated damages and the need to recover after Hurricane Maria, the Puerto Rican government told Congress was somewhere around $139 billion.
So $8 billion is a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, and
that was right after
he was illegally holding this, right? So this is where we're at. And now in this recent moment with the earthquake, it's a little. Maria was scary. This is scary in its own way. There are so many people that have been displaced, economically displaced from the island. This $8 billion is a drop in the bucket. You have people leaving every day. The UN says Puerto Rico's population is going to be 2 million by the end of this century. We lost 500,000 before Maria. We are in a population crisis, and so by denying these funds, it's a clear message that they want the island to depopulate. There's really no other answer because the United States has the power and the money to support us.
Well, you also tweeted that the collapse of infrastructure on the island is not a result of bad luck, but as a result of colonialism. Explain that.
Well, the United States right now is dealing with Puerto Rico in a different way than other states. It's not that other states have had wonderful disaster recoveries. But Puerto Rico's government before these disasters had a fiscal control board that was controlling its finances, right? Democratic control of budgets have been usurped in Puerto Rico. That's part of the reason the power grid is the way it is, why the water's poisoned. And if you look, what's happening in Puerto Rico, it's actually happening in other places in the U.S. Look at Flint, right? If you look at Flint, Michigan, why did they deal with the poisoning of their water? There was a fiscal manager that was changing their water sources, right, to save money. So some of these affect U.S. states. Some of this affects U.S. states. But colonialism, we have been suffering under U.S. rule since 1898, right? Puerto Rico cannot determine its own fate. It now cannot control its own economy, and the U.S. doesn't want to help with the funds to rebuild. So where does that leave us?
So should Puerto Rico become a state, or would you like to see it independent?
I want Puerto Rico to have the right to determine its own future and the support to rebuild and accomplish that. And that's something that, while the U.S. government isn't doing, thankfully, people throughout this city, throughout this country, throughout the diaspora are doing what they can to try and help Puerto Rico rebuild. We just had a fundraiser in East Harlem yesterday. We're close to 10,000 raised. And that's supporting Brigada Solidaria del Oeste. That's why I'm like a little tired. We had a wonderful night last night. Brigada Solidaria del Oeste, Coordinadora Paz para la Mujer, two organizations that are helping recover in the South. So while the U.S. government isn't supplying that aid, the diaspora, all of us are getting together to try and fill those gaps. It's just a shame that we have to keep doing that.
And so how do you have faith in the government then? I mean, we all watched sort of post-hurricanes, the governor's crisis where no one wanted the job. You remember that, right?
Yeah,
in Puerto Rico. And certainly, the president waiting years to distribute aid for the hurricanes that cannot build the Puerto Ricans' faith in their government, federal government and local government?
No one in Puerto Rico, I mean, very few people have faith in the Puerto Rican government, very few have faith in the U.S. government. That's why, you know, who's there for us? It's us. We keep each other safe. It's up to individuals who care. The U.S. government doesn't, but individual U.S. citizens do. And Puerto Ricans throughout the country, you know, have been stepping up, and non-Puerto Ricans have been stepping up. It's up to us to do it. Trump obviously doesn't care. We're beyond that. So what are we doing to step up? And there's a couple good fundraisers I want people to know about tonight. The New York State Nurses Association is going to be at 131 West 33rd Street, second floor auditorium. They're doing a medical brigade to Utuado, and then I'm co-hosting a fundraiser at Beer Wax on the 28th, which will be supporting Brigada Solidaria del Oeste, which again is doing really good relief work, getting medical supplies out brigades, and trying to think more sustainably about how we move forward, which is something, again, sadly, the U.S. government isn't thinking through.
It's good that you point out these fundraisers that are happening because there is such a lack of, you know, people need to donate to our fellow Americans because they're in dire straits, and the fact that these fundraisers
we need to donate to them because they're humans, right? Not because they're Americans. Our citizenship has nothing to do with this. We need to support Puerto Ricans because they're humans in crisis, because we are being forced from our island. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but that's always the narrative. Yeah. We hear this all the time. Oh, we have to support them because they're Americans too. And that's a narrative you've heard, especially from Democrats, and that needs to get out. It needs to get out.
Well, there's a lot of people on the earth who need just as much help.
And there's a lot of people,
in other places.
Absolutely.
So I think that to galvanize people in this country to help our fellow citizens is, I think, probably what most people are thinking of. Although you're right, we could solve world hunger.
I think people still need educating too about
to know we are citizens.
Exactly.
Which is the wild part. You know, it goes back to colonialism. A lot of it is invisibility. It's people finding out that we existed after Hurricane Maria and remembering, oh, I guess they still need help after this crisis. Meanwhile, we've been going through it.
I think you're right to point out the colonialism, the history. I think if people read the history of Puerto Rico, they would see why Puerto Rico is where it is right now. Yeah, and it's not because Puerto Ricans can't get it together. There's a long history there.
And going to the insular cases, that's exactly it. We are property of, but we're not part of the U.S. And that is at the root. That colonial relationship is at the root of the inequity when it comes to funding in normal times or in crisis.
Andrew Padilla, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for supporting.
Absolutely.
Well, basically, what Puerto Rico is dealing with is basically join the club. This country don't give a damn about any people of color. And you're getting an unquote nigger moment on the world stage when your back is up against the wall, where you are at your weakest point. What a shame. What a shame. But some of these other races are going to really find out. You find out about people when you are in a crisis. And it's sad. It is really sad to see what's going down. But let's keep in mind, they voted for Trump. And there's a lot of people over there that can't stand you and I, you know, and don't have a much darker hue, all right? You know, the darker the individual, we have seen it, the worse they treat it. Y'all know I'm high yellow, and I have observed these things for years. And some of my brothers and sisters are kings or queens that have the same type of hue I have. These people will make a gesture thinking that we done coon the fuck out, and they find out real quickly we're not down for that. I cannot name a period in my life where I turned my back on my folks. But trust and believe, when they find out that you don't want to be fucked with and you down for your people 100%, well, they treat you real bad and stuff. And it's all a game, you know. It's all a game, you know, divide and conquer, you know, put the light-skinned folks in the big house and the darker hue folks out there picking cotton, you know. And eventually they gonna fuck over you too. And they was fucking over us in them houses too. So these folks is getting a nigger moment. And when they're at their worst state. So as we continue on, let me see where we're at. Okay, we're going to get into something we're going to back up on. Oh, okay. Let me go back over here first. So, this is the governor, Wanda Vasquez, and we're going to find out more what's really going on with her. You know, folks is real pissed with her right now over in her country. So, new governor under fire in Puerto Rico. Governor, I can't pronounce that dude, Ricardo Russell something, officially handed in his resignation following 12 days of protests in Puerto Rico. But now his successor, former Justice Secretary Wanda Vasquez, is also facing calls to resign. Okay, let's get deeper into this. Okay, so this one is July 26, 2019.
So turning now to Puerto Rico, Governor Ricardo Rosselló has officially handed in his resignation letter to the government. But now his likely successor is facing calls for her resignation. Justice Secretary Wanda Vasquez is likely to become the interim governor after Rosselló steps down next Friday. But Vasquez is being accused of not investigating the mismanagement of aid after Hurricane Maria. She is also accused of awarding government contracts to friends and political allies. Protesters say Vasquez is too close to Rosselló, to his administration, and should not accept the position. So, Refinery 29 senior writer Andrea Gonzalez Ramirez is back with us today to give us more insight into the protests and the Puerto Rican government. Thank you so much for coming. I feel like we've covered the protests a lot, but we need to give more context so people can understand what's happening. So let's start with what we just brought up, though. Wanda Vasquez, she looks like she's going to be the one to take the position temporarily because the person who should have taken the position resigned already amidst a cloud of corruption and so on and so forth. But what is going on with Wanda? What's her issue? Is she too close to Rosselló?
Yeah, protesters say that she's too close to his administration. She has declined to prosecute or investigate the pro-statehood party, which is the party she belongs to and Rosselló also belongs to. So protesters say she's part of the family, she's part of this cycle, this system, and it's not acceptable that she will become our new governor. She also has not held elected office before. She was a prosecutor, she ran the women's advocate office, but she has not ran elected office. And for a lot of people, it's like, how is she gonna handle Washington? How is she gonna handle, like, you know, people in the island from a cross-section of political beliefs? Like, is she even prepared to do this? So there's a lot of concerns. You're already seeing Wanda renuncia, Wanda resign, written on the streets of Old San Juan. So I think that the resignation of Governor Rosselló is just the first step for a lot of these protesters.
So the thing about Wanda Vasquez, though, is that what she is being accused of is what President Trump has suggested is one of the main problems with Puerto Rico, right? In April, he did not want to sign a funding bill to help states that have been dealing with natural disasters, and the primary reason was he didn't think that Puerto Rico deserved the money because of mismanagement. That got a lot of people upset, but still they were like, you know, he might have a point there, right? So just to let people know how the pressure built in such a short period of time, it seems like a short period of time. That was one thing in April where the president said, you don't know how to spend this money, we're not giving you billions of money. But then next came the Treasury Secretary, who came forward and announced that he had gone to the FBI to investigate some of the people within the Rosselló administration. The governor reacted very badly to that. And then it goes from there. Just give us, if you can, the brief timeline, the dominoes that led to Rosselló resigning.
Yeah, this has been building up for a couple of months. Like the leaked chats were just that last straw for a lot of people, right? Like you've seen after Hurricane Maria, like this push between the Trump administration and the Rosselló administration just because of the political situation in Puerto Rico. Like they were like, you're not giving us enough money, and the Trump administration was like, well, you don't deserve it because you don't know how to manage it, because you have this history of corruption with past administrations as well. So when the Treasury Secretary resigns, then this pressure starts building up for a lot of these protesters, and they're like, well, we need this aid. We need to be, rebuild the island after what happened in 2017, but we're facing all these challenges to do so. And then by the time the leaked chats were released to the public, it was just a massive amount of anger because it showed what a lot of people already knew. Like you had Rosselló cuddling with lobbyists, for example, and like his associates and his aides all talking together, making fun of people, but also talking about issues that do affect the Puerto Rican people and how they handle that money. So it was not just a thing that happened out of the blue. No. It's like a historical thing that's been going on, and then in the last couple of months it got really rough.
So a number of resignations amidst allegations of corruption, but that's not all that is upsetting the people of Puerto Rico. And if you looked at the signs, the protest signs, it wasn't just about let's clean house in the governor's mansion. There were other things too, particularly the oversight board.
Yes.
So how does that work? Because people might not know.
So in 2016, after the former governor Alejandro Garcia Padilla said, we have a massive $72 billion debt and we cannot pay it. It's unpayable. After that happened, the Obama administration and then the Republican-controlled Congress came together to try to figure out how to help Puerto Rico. They did not want to bail out Puerto Rico, and there was no mechanism to do that because it is a U.S. territory. It's not a state. It's not a city. So it's just a weird place to exist. So they created this fiscal oversight board. It's, I think, 9 unelected members. That first iteration was composed by people the Obama administration and House Speaker Paul Ryan and the Republican Congress chose. It was only 2 Puerto Ricans who were there, and those 2 Puerto Ricans, one this political a government organization that contributed to the crisis, and the other one had ties to one of the biggest banks in the island. So you're bringing in people that help create the crisis to an extent. So for a lot of people, they were saying, Enrique renuncia y llévate a la Junta. Take the oversight board with you, because we did not elect them. They're passing all these austerity measures that had to do with the University of Puerto Rico, that had to do with the Department of Education, with all these areas that impact the daily lives of Boricuas there. And they're not happy about it. They're like, these people, we did not choose them. They're just telling us how to spend our money. They're telling us they're making cuts here and here and here, and we don't like it, so take them with you.
So you have political representation that have no influence in Washington.
Yes.
And you have a board telling you how to spend your money, right? So that's an incredibly frustrating position to be. When I looked at the population of the protesters, you saw an awful lot of young people. Now, maybe young people got a lot of time to protest, but it certainly seems like, we're looking at between 14 and 30 years old is the range that a lot of people have been saying. What does that say? Because this is the group of people that many people felt left the island after the hurricane because they thought, there's no future here.
I mean, I left the island because I felt like there was no future there for me. I think that, I've had these conversations with friends and family and sources, and my parents' generation, they grew up in prosperity. Like, they were fine. Like, the way the economy was being held in the 80s, the 90s, it was okay for the island. But my generation did not see that. Puerto Rico started a recession in 2006. Then you had the financial crisis here, which trickled down to the island. And then in 2015, it was like, well, we have a massive debt crisis that we don't know how to pay for it. So yeah, this generation, it's angry. They don't have the same ties to the political parties as previous generations, And Puerto Rico is not Democrats and Republicans. It's pro-statehood, pro-Commonwealth, or pro-independence. And the younger generation does not subscribe to those political ties that are more partisan. So for a lot of young people, they were like, we have nothing left to lose, so we're just gonna take to the streets and we're gonna organize, and then we'll see what happens. They've taken everything from us, so what else we have to lose? Nothing.
Perfect. Context is so important when we're trying to tell people the news. I really appreciate it.
All right, my royal family. So we got a bit of an insight on how their government move over in Puerto Rico. And it's quite obvious, again, that Trump has no intentions of helping these people at all. And you heard the first guy that spoke. People are leaving that island in droves. And money is being sent over there, but where the hell is it really going? You know, who's following the money, you know? So, now let's get into some present news. And this was put up 13 hours ago. Fallout over unused Puerto Rican aid continues. Officials in Puerto Rico have released a new information following the discovery of unused Hurricane Maria aid in a warehouse. Meanwhile, demonstrations have broken out on the island with hundreds of protesters chanting outside of the governor's mansion in San Juan, calling for Governor Wanda Vasquez resignation. All right, well, let's get deeper into this.
Turning now to Puerto Rico, where new information has been released following the discovery of unused Hurricane Maria aid in a warehouse. Officials released what they say is a full list of the aid found inside that warehouse, and it highlights where the aid went, when it was delivered, and how much of it was distributed. So meantime, the government has yet to release a list of all aid locations. And demonstrations have begun on the island, with hundreds of protesters chanting outside the governor's mansion in San Juan, calling for her resignation. This all comes 1 week after the Trump administration released heavily restricted Hurricane Maria aid, months after the scheduled deadline. FEMA has responded to criticism of the delayed aid, saying that they will continue to impose stringent fiscal oversight due to the island's significant history of fiscal irregularities. BuzzFeed reporter Brianna Sachs has been following these developments and joins me now from Los Angeles. All right, Brianna, let's talk about this. Governor Vasquez fired both the emergency management director and the Department of Housing director following the warehouse discovery. Is this going to impact the remaining aid that has yet to be released for the hurricane aid, and also the aid that has not been released for, the hurricane aid, but also the earthquake aid? I was so stunned that the Hurricane Maria aid was only just being released. It's easy to get your sort of timelines confused. But anyway, do you think this is going to have an impact? Because when FEMA talks about a history of irregularities, here's Exhibit A. Look at this warehouse.
Right. No, FEMA contends that it will not change its rolling out of aid despite this scandal with the warehouses. FEMA says it's going to continue to work on the ground with Puerto Rico and promises that nothing will change in terms of getting the aid directly to the people. To me, FEMA says it actually has 7 warehouses in Puerto Rico and has doled out, at the request of the Puerto Rican government, millions of pallets of water, tarps, cots, and they didn't respond for request or comment as to who is, where that aid has gone. They don't really know, but they said it's responsibility of the state to make sure that aid gets to the people. It was a pretty stern statement from FEMA, but as far as I know and what they have said, they're not pulling back in any way. And, they just released, Trump just, FEMA confirmed that $39.5 million grants had been approved almost a day ago to build a new hospital, which actually was devastated in Hurricane Maria in 2017.
All right, so that's good news. We haven't seen the results from the 48-hour investigation that the governor ordered into the status of aid across the island, not just that warehouse, but, what other warehouses are out there. So we haven't seen the results of that yet. How do you suppose, why is that? And how do you suppose that impacts, the trust that people have in the government?
Yeah, that was surprising because, the governor quickly took action after this scandal broke. She fired her emergency management director as well as 2 other high-ranking officials. and promised an immediate investigation, which would be completed in 48 hours. The 48-hour mark came and went. There was still no investigation. People started protesting. They already have a deep mistrust in the government because of the hurricanes in 2017. Then she announced the investigation was concluded and is turning it over to the Justice Department for a more in-depth probe based on the recommendation of her Special Investigations Bureau. So no one really knows what this investigation says. We just know it's completed and the Justice Department is looking into it. But, people want answers, and that has sparked protest for about 2 or 3 nights now outside the Capitol, as well as the governor's palace.
So speaking of those protests, and we've seen some pretty high-profile people getting involved, like Ricky Martin. Last time we saw protests like that, the Governor Roseo, was forced to step down, and then no one wanted the job. We went to the next person in line and the next person in line, and it was actually really difficult to get somebody to take that job. So then I have to ask, there are calls now for the current governor to step down. Will that be helpful or harmful to the island?
I mean, at this point, I think it's a very divisive topic because some people at these protests are yelling back, like, well, who will take the job? Like, who's going to come in instead as angry and hurt and fed up as, Puerto Rican residents are, and they want the governor to resign. There really isn't anyone next in line that we have seen residents cheering for or rallying behind. So I think that's the big question right now is like, if she were to resign, who would be able to take the job? But she is scrambling. She's been very active on Twitter, firing back at allegations that she knew about these warehouses and that she was involved or maybe overlooked them. So it's a lot of drama also going on right now with the officials that she did fire, who have come out and said, actually, she knew about this. Like, these warehouses were in her emergency management plan that she signed in August. So she should have known what was here. So there's a lot of also mistrust going on within officials and a lot of finger pointing as to who knew these warehouses were there, stocked with tons of needed aid for people who were still sleeping outside, after all these hundreds of earthquakes have continue to hit their region.
All right, Brianna Sachs, thank you so much for bringing it.
Well, so we got an update, and what I was thinking about my royal family was that that what this government, or let's say Trump and his folks, is doing to Puerto Rico, you see, they, as far as releasing funding for the aid, they way behind. You see that. And basically their argument is, well, y'all so corrupt, when we do release funds, shit happens. It ain't just happening in Puerto Rico. That's throughout the United States and stuff. So they're taking advantage of them not being stable within their government. It's not a good look, and folks distrust them. And then, it's a bad look when you open up and there's more warehouses. And she even admitted that she knew about these warehouses, and all of a sudden it's an oversight. So they're taking advantage of your missteps. Now, I reported a video, I think 2 weeks ago, about their power issue. And FEMA directly he made a call to the reporter when they went to the power plant to let them know, we're not coming over there helping you with shit. Because, they're requesting a power grid, and the type of grids that they have literally could light up cities. Me working in the world of construction, I didn't see these grids. They can fly these jokers in and light up that whole island. So I know it may be confusing to some people, where they say, well, they're giving aid, but they still distributing the aid from the hurricane stuff, So they just doing them any old kind of way. Like I said, it was supplies out in front of everybody when they had that last hurricane, and people needed those supplies, and they just sat there. And there's people who have volunteered that try to go like up in the mountainous regions of Puerto Rico because they're they get the least amount of help. But I mean, overall, folks is just getting some trickle down stuff. But there's something I wanted to read to y'all real quick that I got from one of my subs, and she's always dropping jewels on me. Not giving up no names, but I got this on the 17th of this month. She said, I have some news for you. I talked to my friend, and I'm going to leave your friend's name out. I don't want nobody coming up on nobody today. And guess what? She told me the earthquakes in Puerto Rico, she said the military are setting off bombs in the ocean. All of the locals know this, but the news fails to mention it. And, I had said, me living in earthquake country, that the initial earthquake, it'll shake you up a little bit, but what really shakes you up is the aftershocks. And for probably from 3 to 5 days, you'll get a lot of these hundreds of aftershocks, but it's still lingering on. I believe it. They blew up them levees, during the Katrina stuff. So I believe it, because they want their ass up off that island. They don't want them people there. They just want enough people there when they want to play golf and bask in the sun and burn up. They want enough people to wait on them, and that is it, and that is all. Because anything that need to be done, they always putting it off a year. Okay, we got to, put up power. That's going to take a year. People immediately know that. It's a problem over there. So since they've been operating as long as they've been operating, and now they are a part of the United States, they're going to take full advantage of it, and folks going to feel some kind of way. You heard the young lady speak. I got up out of there. She came into the States because there is no progress. And to do that psychologically damage people because they don't see no progress. And then on top of that, you keep feeling all these damn tremors, and it's haunting. You don't want to be in the house. I felt them jokers. It's like, I'd rather be outside. And I don't want this building crumbling on me. So there's a lot of people still out there. But at the end of the day, even though we may see Trump sending in some aid, you see how long it's taken for him to send the aid in. He's dragging his damn feet, and they don't give a damn about them people at all. I mean, we have had major disasters that have happened over here all last year, and other disasters that Trump don't talk nothing about. We have had towns down south that are gone. So these folks over here in Puerto Rico think they waiting for Trump to help. Ain't gonna help you. And them young folks, and I'm not saying the older folks, them young folks is out there protesting. They like, I ain't fucking feeling this, And so if they ask the governor to ask her to step down, who else gonna run it? No, they're gonna bring some folks like they have already did to take over the narrative, and they gonna run it the way they gonna run it. So I just wanted to give a family an update. I thank the 2 people that tapped me on the shoulder to do another video about this, and my queen continue to keep sending me these jewels that you keep dropping, because again, like I said, she got somebody over there she know that said that the military are setting off bombs in the ocean. All of the locals know this, but the news fails to mention it. So I know there will be more to come, and I'll report it, my royal family. So anyway, render your voice with your beautiful divine words. And as always, my royal family, I thank you for your love. I thank you for your support. And with that said, Ashe.